So thanks to our friends from NEAR for inviting me. I'm at Ocean Protocol, which is an AI blockchain project. And we're friends with SingularityNet and a bunch of other AI and data-related blockchain projects. So I was very happy to, help out with moderating this webinar. I hope we will have a very interesting conversation. Cool story. If you don't know about NEAR, they used to be an AI startup. So Ilya here is actually the actual AI genius. So he used to be one of the early people behind TensorFlow, which is one of the two most used frameworks. Let's wait maybe another couple of, maybe 2 minutes, not too long, because then we're at 5% of the time that we have already. Arif, where are you based? Where do you
right
live?
now, I'm based in Washington D.C., but I grew up in Singapore.
So you're doing lobbying for legalizing synthetic intelligences.
I wish I had that sexy a job. I'm stuck as a founder in my apartment trying to build a startup. So that's as sexy as it can get.
How did you end up in Washington out of all the entrepreneurial hubs in US?
Yeah, no, when I finished, I was in the Web 2 world for some time. So I was working for LinkedIn, leading their sales and marketing in Southeast Asia. And then I worked for a SoftBank-backed startup called Grab, which did ride-hailing. And then I burnt out. And I wanted a new framework. And around early 2017, I decided to pack my bags and head to San Francisco. And I met a bunch of eatheads who are also into consciousness hacking. And so that started off a whole new journey. This is where I met Ben and his team, SingularityNet. They were just starting out. And so I did that CMO role for a bit. And about late last year, I decided that the opportunity for synthetic media is going to be tremendous, and I should start my own company. So this was part of it, and I also have family in DC. So, but I was traveling quite a bit between New York, DC, and LA, which is where I think synthetic media will have a huge role to play.
Oh, true. Ilya, do you want to give everyone an intro to NEAR and the format of this, also including me, like this first time I'm participating in one of these talks?
For sure, yeah. So kind of giving quick overview. So first of all, hi everyone, I'm Ilya, co-founder at NEAR. And so this community talks is kind of high level, right? It's just trying to bring awareness of the projects in the ecosystem. And we're not thinking of it like NEAR ecosystem, we're thinking of it more like open web ecosystem, or ideally like anything cool over time, which because everything cool should be in open web. So kind of as a plug, we have this thing called Open Web Collective, which is really a very open community of founders who are building toward kind of this ideals and kind of principles of open web, right? Being able, to control your own stuff, being able to use things that are kind of shared and open, and not locking users into the kind of centralized platforms. And so we're bringing different projects to kind of highlight about them, and then obviously do an AMA and be able to learn more about them. I mean, NEAR is, it's a proof of stake kind of blockchain. From our perspective, we believe that, we're solving some of the technical challenges of the kind of existing ecosystem. But, first and foremost, as a team, we're thinking more about how to grow ecosystem and how to actually get to really useful and productive stuff for everyone, right? For the world in general. So that's why, again, the whole point is to bring, to learn, to educate. We have quite a few different kind of initiatives for education. So we have a whiteboard series, which is about technical protocol level interviewing. We've interviewed like 40 protocols. We have an open web podcast, which is about kind of more entrepreneurship and kind of investment VC style. We have like fireside chat, which is kind of prequel for open web. So, and this community talks is kind of more hands-on, like community conversations. So yeah, so I'll give kind of stage to Arif for presenting about Alethea, and then Nima will kind of do some moderate the AMA, and I guess have his own questions to to challenge the product, right?
Yes, we'll talk about the dark side of the open web a little bit. So, Arif, the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks, Nima. Thanks, Ilya, for creating this platform as well, and a nice as well for all of the good work in bringing together the community. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. This probably is going to take me 5 minutes. I think the interesting parts are the discussion that emerge from the technical viewpoint, the philosophical viewpoint, but I find it helpful to start with some sort of mental model around how to deal with this revolutionary new technology that is coming to market rapidly, right? So let me just share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Yeah, is it visible? Okay, so then maybe after this, Nima, towards the end, perhaps you could share the Lady Gaga video I sent you, just so that people can understand the positive use cases as well, not just the fear-based stuff, right? So let me just play this, and I'll walk you through some of the thinking here. So the thesis here we have is that faces and voices are becoming composable. You can cut, copy, and paste a face or a voice, just like you would type text or generate new words. And this revolution that is being facilitated through GANs, but also through the open source community, is going to fundamentally transform the way content is created. So below is an example where we used, I mean, we did this satirically, but we sort of used CZ from Binance, who's one of the largest exchange providers, and somebody whose face and voice data is extremely valuable, right? If you take that face and voice without his permission, you can cause a lot of havoc in the markets if you wanted to, right? And then for satire, we swapped his face into a martial arts flick. I encourage all of you to check it out, where we put him into a Jet Li film. So it's sort of a one-to-one thing. On the right, you see sort of a comedian, John Oliver, swapped into Jimmy Fallon. And what you're seeing here, the point I want to make here is that it's going to get easier to cut, copy, and paste faces and voices like never before. The only problem is, I think we are in the Napster era, right? So we are in the Napster era where your face data and voice data is going to get pirated quite easily. There are very few protections. And even more so, there are companies like Clearview.AI that have scraped your data, your face data already, resold it to security agencies that have created facial recognition algorithms in partnership with big tech to then resell so that Black people and people of color or women and minorities can be negatively affected. So that's the cycle we're in right now, where there is no underlying infrastructure to say this face belongs to me. You have no rights over it. To be very clear, the face data that we have, we already arbitrage and compromise it when we go to airports. I am comfortable with giving up my face security and my passport because I need to make other people feel safe on the plane when they travel with me. That's part of the compromise we make as part of the social contract, so everyone's safe, especially after 9/11. But the consequence of outside of security, outside of the airport, is basically everyone's faces and voices being taken away from them, and taken away by the person who can scrape most of it. And we've seen some examples of that in big tech today. The iTunes part is interesting because that will actually create a permissioned layer where you can allow individuals to have access to their data in a way that works. Whether this solution emerges as a centralized solution or a decentralized solution remains to be seen. But I think there's going to be one large player that will essentially serve as the Twitter blue tick And I'll show an example of the Elon Musk example where he has a ton of deepfakes floating around, and we'll try and ascertain whether some are true or not. So I just thought I'd set this mental model up. But deepfakes are not necessarily bad. Everybody who views deepfakes starts off with the presupposition that this technology is harmful. I prefer to start off with the presupposition and the question, how much truth is there in that specific society? So I have a mental model and framework. I don't know whether this is going to be helpful, but this is how I think about it, having lived in both the East and the West. There are systems that orient their media ecosystems towards centralized control, and there are other systems that orient it towards some degree of freedom. If you go to China, you cannot swap Xi Jinping with Winnie the Pooh. You are going to end up in jail. In the US, there now has been some decent regulations, thankfully, to ban deepfake pornography, which is very, very important. In the US also, there has been a movement, at least, to have the media regulate this technology, or at least put together some sort of framework where the media and industry can come together. The only problem here is, and I say this passionately and dispassionately as well, is if I am wrong about something, and if I am wrong about, let's say I believe in UFOs, and I've done a little bit too many mushrooms, right? And I believe in this very strongly, and my beliefs have little consequences because I'm not a person in a position of power. It's very different from when the New York Times gets the idea that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and we should bomb 100,000 Muslims. So when an institution gets something wrong and promotes an agenda that is pro-war or anti-war or whatever framework they have, we have to ask ourselves the question to whether they should be the gatekeepers of this technology and whether this falls under the liberal side or on the conservative side. So pardon my slight preaching, but I just want to make my philosophy clear that I lean towards the freedom angle, which is we should provide democratic access to synthetic media creation tools for people to use them as creatively as possible, with the exception of harmful use cases like pornography. So I'm somewhere here, and I think the philosophy of my company, Alethea, and Alethea is named after the Greek goddess of truth for a reason, because we believe sometimes that we live in such a strange world that deep fakes can be a great opportunity to present deep truths. So where does the blockchain come into all of this, right? Like, okay, AI has created this content revolution. How do we deal with a society that does not yet have a good understanding with news or information? How do we transform this entire landscape so that we can actually make a net positive contribution to the world? I give this example of Elon Musk. So if you go on the web today, you will see almost a ton of Elon Musk deepfakes out there. There's baby Elon, there's Elon at the Rock, there's Elon here, and then there's Elon on the Joe Rogan show where he was smoking weed, which actually is not a deepfake, but may have been because it caused the SEC and several other government contracts to call him up to cancel it. Or at least caused him a lot of problems. And that's actually sort of a deepfake campaign. If you wanted to harm a publicly listed company, put their CEO saying something harmful and then short the stock, right? That's one nefarious way of using the technology. But what happens here is when you have so much content, this is the chaos this technology is bringing. What is going to bring order? And I think the thing that blockchains are good at doing at some level is consensus agreement on a single value, right? And I say value because it's a number that people can agree on, whether it is timestamping, but they don't necessarily agree on the meaning or the content of that value. So what blockchains can do is you can provide a framework similar to Twitter's blue tick. And Twitter is going to be increasingly relevant in this discussion because Twitter is also going into the voice business. And you can now start uploading, depending on your jurisdiction or geography, you can now start uploading your data. What will happen in the future, I believe, is you'll have a permission layer where individuals will use this technology to license out their face and voice data. And that can be referenced and anchored on chain. And at least that signature and that permission can be placed there. Outside of that, everything else must be assumed to be false. So there's going to be a flip in the way we perceive truth in society, if there isn't already, that our default mental model is going to move towards skepticism. But that depends on how human beings are wired. I want to call everyone's attention to the way that Adobe Photoshop changed the way women should look at themselves by promoting unhealthy images on the front covers of magazines. We as a society said that was okay, right? But actually it's all fake. Everyone understands that these magazines are photoshopped, but somehow we are okay with that sort of business model. If we are okay with these sort of truths, which will emerge slowly, we have to figure out internally as a society what the degree of truth is in the society and what we are willing to tolerate. So I'll just pause here because it opens up a lot of questions, and it'll provide us a framework to at least understand that at the core, this technology of copying faces and pasting them is going to get so cheap and so easy to do in the next 2 years that I believe that we will need a layer of trust in society. And that layer of trust can be a strong blockchain that can provide scalability and high support, low latency, and all of the features that are needed to solve this problem. So I'll just stop here. And maybe one nice example, Ilya, if you wanted to share, I don't know whether the Lady Gaga video will work, but this is an example of permission deepfakes. When somebody wants to use their face and voice to leverage this technology. So if you think of celebrities that are stuck in the pandemic and cannot travel, we spoke with the agency that represents their interests, and we've developed this pilot for them to showcase how Lady Gaga can speak Mandarin without leaving her home.
Can we show that if it's not too long?
Yeah, sure. Nima, if, I think it's about a 30-second video.
Anis, do you have that video? You're on mute.
Actually, if it takes too long, then I can just share the link out later, but we can sort of go through the questions. Oh yeah, Anis is there. Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome.
This one, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a video. Oh, maybe we won't have the sound. So.
Okay, no problem. I'll send the link out, but it's sort of a private link.
Do you hear?
No,
you don't hear. Okay.
It's fine, but I think we can imagine. You know,
yeah, no problem.
Arif, thank you for the intro, at least to the space that you're working in. I'm not sure if it was Simon de la Riviere or someone else, one of our Galaxy Brain crypto philosophers, who said, if it's not on blockchain, it doesn't exist. I mean, you really have to take this to the extreme, but like this is in a way what you were pointing to, that the default expectation should be that everything is fake unless it's verifiable that through things like, you know, this thing being on blockchain. Ilya, you had a point, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I don't know if you guys seen this company Wire something lost $2 billion, and they had a document signed by a Bank of Philippines, which was fake. And that's where the $2 billion kind of disappeared. Wirecard, yeah. And it's just like it's amazing because Wirecard is backing a bunch of crypto currency credit cards. So it's just like such a hilarious moment where it's like you clearly should, we should clearly sign not by, paper and pen, but like on blockchain and record there. But yeah, so I think yes, on video and images and in person, but like we need to start with things that are clearly signatures where people are not using it even there.
That's interesting. Like, Arif, where do you see normal users starting to at least get used to this new reality? Like, I think it's a little bit too much to expect that every YouTube video, or when you have augmented reality glasses, your actual reality could be fake. That's even more scary. You cannot have a green SSL lock sign on everything and everyone's face and everyone's voice. That's really scary. It's almost like you need an antivirus software for your life, like for everything. But where do you see like a very simple first step that people could start, playing with these technologies and getting used to signatures?
Yeah, I think the technology aspect of it is, for me, we really love the creator economy, and we really love the creativity people will create with some of this technology. So we're focused on building out the technical tools that allow people to build cool content in a permissioned way. And the faster people can play around with it and create cool content, the faster they'll understand that this is a type of revolutionary art form that can be very helpful in shaping the world. So if you look at the way Disney transformed image animation from the 1920s to the 1980s, you'll realize very quickly that there were several technological inflection points. And anything that has to do with the ability to animate a face or a voice has been an inflection point. Previously, animation was done on paper, so you'd have to take the paper and move it, right? Like this was in the 1920s. But then the invention of certain types of cameras and techniques transformed animation and created new industries. So that same transformation is likely to occur within this landscape that we're operating in, except now creators would be able to take different pieces of face and voice data, create new mock-ups, mashups. I encourage all of you to check out the cool channel on YouTube called Vocal Synthesis. Vocal Synthesis is an interesting channel where an unknown machine learning engineer decides to take public voice data and have them read the meme Navy SEAL copy pasta. So you can hear Barack Obama say the Navy SEAL copy pasta, or even Nelson Mandela more lately, right? So you can build voice models and face models. The line between what is going to be true and false is going to change, but I think once creators and the creative economy understands that these are just tools to use, you'd start seeing more examples, and you then start seeing questions. I actually think this is a very healthy discussion to have about what is true and what is false in society, because the institutions that we've trusted with the truth have severely let us down. And that's why you have a framework and approach where you need to work with decentralized communities who can determine their own local truths.
It's like not your keys, not your truth.
Yeah, no, I think timestamping everything on the blockchain is sort of a bit strange to me, because you sort of then living in a blockchain-based reality. The only question then is who controls the blockchain? Is it the government? Is it a decentralized community? Is it a centralized community pretending to be a decentralized community? Who then determines the aspects of the layers of truth that would emerge from that ecosystem, right? Because I know
think it's relative.
Yeah.
It's relative. Like you cannot ever have 100% privacy, 100% security, 100% decentralization. It's like what people are comfortable with, and it's a balance between maybe performance, decentralization, a couple of factors, but to your point, it would be scary if this like settlement layer for reality would be owned by a company.
Yeah, in certain countries it is already owned by the state, right? So like if the settlement layer of truth is my truth, not yours, and whatever is timestamped there. So there was a doctor, for example, in China, who was the one who called out the COVID-19 situation way before it happened, and then was subsequently immortalized on the Ethereum blockchain by timestamping his records, right, to make sure that his memory is not forgotten. I think there are some creative use cases that are going to emerge even when you have state control narratives, because the desire to discover truth is sort of a perpetually human endeavor.
Yeah. I don't think we have audience questions yet. Let me just take a look at chat. But I wanted to hear a little bit more about like a breakdown of the technology stack of your own company, Alethea, if I'm not mistaken. Because it's really kind of you to not show your own project. You gave us an intro, but maybe it would be interesting to just hear a little bit more like what you use, and especially this being a blockchain community, where does crypto come in, or crypto economics? How do you use blockchain?
Yeah. Well, there's several questions there. So if you go to our site today, maybe I can just share it. We've sort of found a way to use this technology for creative purposes. Maybe I can just share my screen briefly and create interesting characters and art. And imagine one day you would have on this marketplace very interesting top tier celebrities, right? Or people who want to license their face and likeness out to our platform. If you go to our site now, what you'll see essentially a marketplace for creators to build characters using our technology. So if you go to the site, you'll see several cool examples, like this beautiful creation called Don Exotic, which is sort of a hybrid between several people using our technology. So all of these characters, of course, are AI generated, with the exception of this guy, Alex Masmage, who has always wanted to experiment with weird tech. So he's been open to this stuff. But all of these characters are AI generated. They can speak. They sound real. The idea is that this is stock image and photography and video costs that businesses can save on within a pandemic. But also in the future, what will happen is somebody like Lady Gaga will likely license out her likeness and face and voice data on a platform like this, or other platforms that emerge where they can have different ways of monetizing their likeness and fame. Because if you think about their problem, and I know it's strange to say celebrities are hurting, but generally their entire business is affected and impacted because they can't travel for events anymore. Yeah. And even if they travel to Japan or Korea, they have to now go through quarantine or any of the different markets. So if you're a brand, and if you're, let's say, I don't know, Audi in Germany or something, and you wanted to license Lady Gaga's likeness out, what you do previously is you'd have to fly her into the country, do a video shoot, right? But today you don't necessarily have to. You can sort of borrow her face and voice and transfer it in a way that works. So we see ourselves providing unique solutions here. I'd say this map probably shows it clearly. Can you see my screen? We're at the intersection of 3 different plays. And what you see on the site is sort of the marketplace. Once you become a creator, you get access to the software for creating the APIs, for creating the content. But then where I think it's going to be really interesting is this licensing piece, which is going to come from non-fungible tokens, or even aspects that different ecosystems are creating that show ownership. Several different places, and Near Protocol also has been very supportive of our approach and efforts in finding ways to build some of these solutions together. So what you see is on the marketplace, but the technology stack exists behind it. And then where the blockchain comes in, it's in the licensing part, where we think we can actually capture that licensing at the NFT layer. Hopefully that answers your question a bit.
And someone was smarter than us and asked a question about self-sovereign identity. Seems like also a relevant technology we're missing. Sorry if you're looking for a question, I'm just reading it to you. So it's like, do you see self-sovereign identity as a possible helper in the implementation of disproving deepfakes? I think it's about verifiable credentials and SSID. So like, I guess let's, instead of your platform owning the identity side, people could use a self-sovereign identity solution and then connect to Alethea.
To be clear, I have no desire to own the self-sovereign identity ever of any person. It's too much of a risk for a centralized entity to ever own. The best framework would be to plug into a blockchain that has aspects of that already solved. And identity is one of the biggest pieces that the blockchain so far claims to solve, but has not yet made significant progress on. Right? So it's also really important that the self-sovereign identity be stored in a way that provides permissions and access controls to people. There needs to be controls on who can access this information, and if it is a state-sponsored blockchain, or if it's like a specific conglomerate blockchain, there are problems there that will emerge that may not emerge in a more decentralized ecosystem, a relatively more decentralized ecosystem.
Let me go a little bit deeper here, slightly on the dark side of like what's broken now with decentralized identity landscape on at least like Ethereum. People use their like ENS name for everything, and imagine if you connected that to your what do you call it, synthetic media personality? What do you call them actually?
Well, there are several terms in the industry like virtual characters, synths, but I think a new term will emerge that, that there's another one called virtual being, but just assume that it's your digital clone.
Yeah, this digital twin, I think is a well-known concept. Let's for now stick to that. And like, imagine if you connected your like Nima something that is to my virtual twin, and then I would like give my virtual twin to some unholy, not so ethical place, or they might just permissionlessly use it. That might not be very nice if everything's connected to everything. And I'm still not very familiar with Near, but I think Near has this different approach that you can give permission to different apps or dApps in a way that it doesn't go back to the same kind of address, right? Maybe Ilya could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we have, let's just say, very composable way of kind of giving permissions and how to use accounts. So you can pretty much authorize an application, like some application or like specific key to be used on your behalf for that application with specific permissions. You can permission some key to use subset of functionality on your own account. You can, in theory, build like a full kind of permission model on top of it for your account or for applications, right? So it's kind of very programmable. So, and we're actually looking forward to see what people will build, because like right now we have like 3 patterns where it's like this kind of giving applications, giving to yourself, where like you can have 1 key on the ledger, 1 key in your computer. The computer key can only spend like $10 a day. Your ledger is like full access key, or you can have like a multi-sig, right, etc. Right? So you can have all kind of different permissions on top of it. But yeah, I think like moving into the direction of like digital identity, which is actually allows you easily to partition some functions into different kind of faces, is probably a way this is like the space is going in general, and the world probably is going. Like I know Gen Z, definitely is like using multiple identities for different kind of dimensions. So yeah, I think like we'll see how it all evolves. I think big part of it is actually tooling. It's not like, I mean, on the protocol level, we just like made it super flexible, but then as a user, like an easy way to switch identities and like, hey, I'm right now at work, everything I do is kind of signed with my work key, right? Versus, hey, I'm, playing my video games, right? I don't want this to be actually linked in anywhere, right? I want to troll everyone in an easy way, right? So right now, I actually see right now, like Discord is a terrible example, because Discord is designed for video games, but we built for crypto communities around it. And it's really weird when you see like, some of your colleagues or some people you work with on the other side playing video games, because it actually shows you that, right? So we definitely need this. Like this is already a need for sure. Like ideally, I may be friends with them in the gaming context, and then I want to see if they're playing. But so you do need to kind of partition this.
That's a very good point. Like sometimes you're expecting an answer from someone, and you see the guy is not responding, but he's playing like World of Warcraft. Yeah. Okay. So, Arif, another question. I just saw you have like a morphed face of the Tiger King guy and Donald Trump. So my question is, at what point, like how much modification is enough to say this is not Lady Gaga or this is not Nima anymore? Like someone takes my face and my beard is always different. Like my friends never see me with the same face. So like they just change my beard or the color of my eye, something small or some tattoo. Like at what point on YouTube, there's like a whole thing about like copyright and fair use. So have you guys explored that?
Yeah, no, that's an important question. So within the US jurisdiction, thankfully, there are satire protection laws. So if you think of South Park and the way they satirize characters, you can have Kanye West there, and it's a satirical version of Kanye. You can have a satirical version of different people, and it's protected under freedom of speech laws and First Amendment rights, right? So, but the question is on unpermissioned use. So there are two types of deepfakes, in my opinion. There's permissioned, which is, let's say you get Lady Gaga's permission and you create different clones of her. You allow her to speak different languages. You do a media campaign. That's all great because there's permission and consent. Then there's unpermissioned use. Under unpermissioned use, that means you don't take the permission of the person and then you create deepfakes. Unpermissioned use is extremely harmful within the context of deepfake pornography, where they've taken actresses and swapped them onto people without asking their consent and creating a lot of damaging material. That should be illegal. But then there's unpermissioned use under satire, which is perfectly fine. That means if you want to satirize a public figure, you are okay to do that in American laws. I don't know whether the same exists in different places. So you can't do the same. You can't, let's say, swap aspects of Winnie the Pooh and Xi Jinping's face in China. You're going to get in trouble. But in the US, you can, because you can create this swaps in different versions, and that's perfectly fine because you're making the claim that this is fake, and you're stating it upfront, that this is satirically different and this is satire. As long as the claim is made, then you are good. But yes, somebody technically could take your face and voice and create modifications of it and do great harm to you. One day, that would be possible because of the, I mean, it already exists, right? Like phishing emails exist, spam exists. Now you apply the same technology to that sort of framework and you realize very quickly that you'll need an antivirus for your identity, right? And that's going to either be provided by some of the larger social media platforms that control some aspects of your identity, or maybe in an ideal world, a decentralized ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't even know if I should talk about this. I was talking to one of my normie friends, like normal, non-AI, non-blockchain human beings. And just before this webinar, and just pitched her the idea, and this came up. And I hope no one from Facebook is here, so we don't give them any good ideas or bad ideas. In fact, I think already right now, Facebook has the permission for billions of their users, people who have not revoked the permission, to use your face on other platforms, not even Facebook, across their partner advertising network, to advertise like stuff like, and I was thinking, my friend was waiting for a friend, and I said, imagine now your friend Alba, you open Instagram and you see a video of Alba in like physically, like completely looking like her, and it's like low resolution, small screens, you can't really tell. And they could basically, and they have the resources to train all these deepfake versions of your friends. They have photos from all angles. They could do this tomorrow. That's horrible. And I think this is worth like ethical and also like sales UX research studies to see like what's the effectivity of just showing a face and showing your actual friend and like animated and, hey, I bought this Adidas pair of shoes, you should also buy them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's Minority Report, right? Like that's a bleak sort of dystopian science fiction future where your friend is selling you the ad, or as you walk into a store, you see your face selling you the ad. And that's going to create immersive engagement, that's for sure. So advertisers will love this technology because you have a tech stack that you can plug into. So if you have Facebook and you have permissions and your friend says, I want to monetize my face to sell to my friends, that's also part of their consent, and it's up to them to work. So my approach has always been democratize the tech, let people create cool stuff with it, let them learn how this technology can evolve in society. And I believe the more people start playing around with the Adobe Photoshop style tools, you'll actually see more creativity emerge, and people will become more inoculated. So instead of, I suppose not the best analogy right now in these times, but instead of fighting the virus by you know, not going out, you can actually inoculate yourself against it by getting it, right? So learn how the virus works. That's one framework that has worked in biology before. So that can be an equal framework for human societies, where you learn how the tools work and you find a way to exist with them.
Yeah,
as opposed to letting big tech control everything. Right?
In a way, you could say your face and your DNA or your physical appearance, your likeness, that's also a form of data and IP. And we're already, used to being exploited now at this point by companies like Facebook and all these things to in a way that we don't get anything back. I really like those projects around universal basic data income or things like this. So I guess you're right. Instead of us just writing dystopian news articles about virtual twins, it's better to right from the start give people sovereignty over their own, let's say, virtual twins, and create, kind of preemptively create the infrastructure, hopefully using decentralized technologies to so we at least have sovereignty over our physical likeness, instead of this also becoming other data that's being exploited by Facebooks of the world.
Yeah, I like what Balaji Srinivasan once said about Bitcoin, teaching people about how made up the system is. Right. So once people started getting Bitcoin, they started understanding really important concept that we may have not had the privilege to learn in school, which is oriented around monetary theory, stimulus, who prints money, who gets the right to, state, government. When you democratize the ability to print your own money supply, whether it's ERC20 tokens or other tokens, you also create harms in the ecosystem, sure, like scams, but you also create this level of understanding in a human being that upgrades their consciousness, which actually is really, really the aim of all of this technology. It's to move us towards more nobler pursuits and stop killing each other. Right?
I'm maybe let's see if you have any questions. I'm also looking at the ones that I prepared myself. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Alex Masmid and like the way you have been cooperating with him?
Yeah. So Alex is, really keen. I shared with him our tech and asked him if he was keen to be the first pilot user of our technology and if he wants to license his face out. And he agreed to testing it out, piloting it out, and we had him as the first human being on our platform, and he won't be the last. And whenever requests come in for him to fulfill or anything of that sort, there's now a mini sort of crowdsource movement that wants Alex to sing a song for them, like the AI Alex to sing a song. So it's an interesting experiment to start off with, but the real breakthroughs will come when really large key opinion leaders and celebrities come on board and start showing that they can speak. So Alex is the crypto celebrity, as I politely refer to him, and he's continuing to grow in his fame and value every month on month, right? So his month-on-month growth in his Alex token is certainly there. So he's always pumping that coin.
Yeah, he's coming up with more ways to capture value and create value for
creators. Yeah, for creators, it is so important, man. Like this entire, I like what Roll is also doing, the social money company that is creating some important experiments for creators to own their assets, their own likeness, their IP. There's so many different facets to their technology. And I think the more creators experiment with this and have ownership, it's going to be a powerful way. So all props to Alex for taking that. And I'm bullish on Alex. Yeah, that's how I end that statement.
Chill, Alex. Yes. No, I got my Nima token. Also, I'm bullish. Nima. So, everyone here gets some 100 Nima tokens. But I'm actually curious if you're thinking about collaborating with Roll or these personal token projects, or if you see a meaningful way of that working out.
Yeah, I see token bonding curves as a very important innovation that will allow creators to have very unique ways of monetizing their work. I don't necessarily see personal tokens interlinked with token bonding curves, but I see that intersection of the creator economy plus token bonding curves merging in a very powerful way. And that's very, very exciting stuff that that I think will actually define the creator economy in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, Alex had a talk, I think also here, right? Yeah. So my next question is like, what are you doing right now for transparency and responsible disclosure? I think I read it somewhere that you show some sign or there is a way to disclose that, but do you also use blockchain there or just for the settlement part?
Yeah, so what we do is every satirical video, every time we take someone's face without their permission, usually it's a public leader. So for example, we did a video where we had world leaders apologizing for not acting on climate change. So we looked at 2032. We forecasted, we created a satirical video that was oriented towards getting people mobilized on climate change when it was an issue earlier this year in January, pre-pandemic, right? And we have a disclaimer up front. We state very clearly that it is fake. And I think we've timestamped one or two things as fake, but not really, more just from a perspective that if people looked up that hash, they would be able to see that we've stated that it is fake. So we make these satirical disclosures, but we also make a point that art and important images are the most powerful and potent forces in a society, right? So one of the first things that existed, unfortunately, when as I studied history, was when Nazi Germany came into power, the first thing they did was ban all sorts of art and imagery that did not conform with their propagandistic frameworks, right? So any symbolism that did not conform to certain type of imagery that they were keen on promoting is very powerful. So I always look at satire as a very powerful tool to sort of break through the noise. And it's one way of providing some sort of framework for people to discover different aspects of society and the truth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we make open disclosures. Yeah, that's
I see. But I mean, the open disclosure part, someone could just easily edit the video and remove that part. I think at least major platforms like Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, they should integrate probably with some kind of self-sovereign identity hub that is definitely self-sovereign, and you could like click under the video and go to the actual person's homepage and verify if this is something that they've allowed or not. And if not, then at least it's disclosed that you should not, this is not verified. Or like if there's any video with over 10,000 views, it should be verified that it's not deepfake.
Yeah, no, I think editing and splicing videos is also a technology. Like screen capture has changed a lot of things. Like people can strategically edit a lot of things out of context. Mm-hmm. And no matter what sort of framework you put in, people can be extremely creative with the content you've created. So there are some ways of solving that problem, but I don't know whether blockchain would come into that, whether it can have that level of continuity to show provenance. That's an interesting framework to look at a content's provenance. And I think some pilots have occurred in this space with New York Times and Reuters, where they've tested out, I think, Hedera Hashgraph, if I'm not mistaken, to check the provenance of content, but primarily images. Because the only problem I have with that is, you can have, it's very difficult to tell a fake image from a real image now, because you can easily doctor all sorts of images today. And you need a forensic expert who studies pixels and uses all sorts of AI tools at their disposal to determine that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why the provenance should come from the creator, right? Like you want the camera pretty much to check in, like as soon as it's taken with, embedded whatever chip. Like there should be, pretty much a chip with a private key, like a ledger inside that signs the photograph, and then when you upload it, like it has all this provenance you know, proof of location and everything. Proof of time,
That
proof
is
of
dope.
location.
Yeah, can you do that with Near?
In the future, yeah, everything's possible. Future is near.
Awesome, that's a nice statement. Yeah. No, there is a startup called TruePic. I think I was experimenting with embedding cryptographic signatures at the point of capture. So they look at this thing called point of capture, which is the moment you create something. At the moment you create it, then there's a provenance layer. The only problem is then you have to scale that distribution across all hardware devices, and good luck with that. Right? Like, how do you scale a global standard? It will take 10 years maybe. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that like, given that we have done that, right? You know, humanity have done like we agreed on images, right? We agreed on standard for images like this, you know, I saw and everything. So I think like if people actually want this, and I think given like how deep learning evolving, people will want this. Like I think we'll get there. Yeah, I think just somebody needs to drive this.
Yeah, and game incentives also, like I think token incentives might be very valuable in nudging people towards maybe positive behaviors that allow the truth to be determined as opposed to falsehoods being perpetuated. Yeah, it's another way that the blockchain can play as well.
As a kind of closing question, maybe last one-ish, you are also on Open Web Collective, right? Are you already there, or you're planning to join?
Yeah. No, I think the Open Web Collective community has been awesome. Super helpful. Mimi, Sasha, nice, and everyone else has been very supportive, because if you're a founder, I think it's a great platform to start and to learn and to connect. And they've asked us some tough questions, like who is our customer? You know, how do you go to market? How do you validate propositions? Like really strong, like that strong Web 2 discipline that Silicon Valley has gotten right, I feel is really a core discipline and value proposition that should translate to Web 3 technologies with a decentralized ethos, of course. So that's been extremely helpful. And yeah, I recommend people check it out, people see it. I promote it any chance I get, because it's a great platform to learn. I think they also have an accelerator that's starting soon as well. So I'm excited to see how the Near ecosystem evolves, and I'm actually excited to dive into some of the technical videos that Ilya was talking about as well, or have our technical team look deeper into that too.
Awesome. So that's also a plug for OWC. If there are no more questions, we could, I guess, wrap up very soon. Thanks to Ilya, Anais, and Nir for the invite, and Arif for joining us. How can people get in touch with you on the Web 2 old internet?
Yeah, for sure. I just sent my email. You know, drop me an email, fairly accessible, and if I'm not, then you'll get my deep fake talking to you.
Okay. And I think your Twitter account is, I think, at AR. Right?
I'm pretty horrible at Twitter, but sure, people can definitely follow me there if they want to on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought like crypto Twitter is like a thing, so it would be nice to share. Anything from your side, Ilya or Anais, or we can wrap up?
Nothing from my end. Thanks everybody who showed up, and thanks Arif for speaking.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
And thanks
for
everyone.
hosting.
Hope this was informative. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.